McCulloch 591 in beautiful downtown Jesup, Iowa. This is the birthplace of the Bohemian Revolution. We are the Bohemian Underground with producer Blake Tempus and co-host Dale Rueber. I am Jim Gillespie, and this is news for June 2nd, 2025.
All right, so this is the halfway month.
We are there. We're sponsored by Mickey D's Pizza and Lobster. The Farrells are kind sponsors of the podcast. Include them on your wedding, graduation, or plans. Don't wait. Their schedule's filling up for 2025, and we have breaking news with them.
Breaking news? Okay.
Yep. They are doing, out of the kindness of their heart, they're doing a traveling Steve Brown Arts Center art show this summer. Wherever they go, they're taking art.
Okay.
They're taking a Steve Brown Arts Center sign, and they're taking a giant 5-gallon water bottle that people can drop coins in.
Oh, okay.
And raising funds for us this summer.
Well, that's a good idea.
It is a very good idea.
Because they get out to lots of places.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can't thank Mike and his wife and his children and his sister-in-law enough. So thank you so much for doing that.
He can only get relatives to work for him, is that right? Or you don't want to say, do you?
Check out the podcast, What Is Up, with our friend Bubba Seaman. Breaking news there as well, Dale.
Okay.
As Blake is been in negotiations with Bubba next week. Our interview, or Bubba's interview with us, is going to be played as Blake will be away on assignment next week.
All right.
So thank you for doing that, Blake.
Did he leave a deposit so we know he'll come back, or?
Not yet. Not yet. We'll get it for you when he leaves.
All right.
Tonight we have a guest, John Klotzbach from the Independence Bulletin Journal. We have the Jesup News. We have the Steve Brown Arts Center News. I've got an essay on freedom, and we talk about top 5 famous news events in Jesup history. I'll argue with Dale a little bit on this point.
Okay.
If we have time. We have top 5 things John does for Jesup as we do that interview. After 3 hours, if people aren't tired of us, we'll probably go home.
Okay, this will be the longest show in history, right? In our history?
It could. It could.
All right, well.
Dale, let's start with Jesup News. What do you have for Jesup News?
Baseball and softball season. School is out, and so we just have baseball and softball. And so I just scheduled for the next week, and not many home games, but baseball and softball at Wapsie Valley is on June the 3rd. At June the 4th, they're both at Grundy Center. And then the 5th, the softball, they're playing at Cedar Falls at 9 o'clock in the morning. So that's kind of unusual. On the 5th, they'll be playing, and there's no boys game that day.
What day is the 5th? Is that
I don't know. The 3rd is what?
No, I'm not sure, but anyhow.
Somebody will look it up.
Yeah.
The 6th is softball is at Union, and then going clear into the 9th, the boys are at Cascade, and the softball's at Anamosa. And then on the 11th, there's baseball at North Lynn, and they're coming to Jesup. And on 12, they're playing Sumner Fredericksburg at Jesup. And then I went clear to the 14th because that's when they have that big Jesup softball tournament up here that draws so many teams.
Oh, yeah.
And if you like softball, it really is an excellent time to come and see lots of games over the course of the day. And so wonderful opportunity for people to see some girls softball. City news, one thing, there's a man named Nick Meyer who's fairly new to Jesup. He bought Larry and Kathy Bigelow's home when they moved into Independence.
Oh, yeah.
And he's in the National Guard, and he's one of those, if you saw on the news tonight, he's being deployed to Iraq for a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so that's a local man anyway that's going to be part of that.
Yeah.
And so his wife is Vicki Hutchcroft's niece.
Oh.
Kind of a family thing, because I was talking about Vicki Hutchcroft in church one day, and they were new to church. She came over and said, "How do you know Vicki?" And I said, I worked with her for years. I know her very well. That's where she was, that Vicki was her mother's sister. So I thought, that's kind of neat. So, okay. The library, they still have the exercise with friends Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8, and the Tuesday card games at 1. They're still going strong with that. And Thursdays, 8 to 9, have the toddler playtime. They're in the community room.
Right.
And then at 10:30, they have the little tot story time. And in the Bulletin Journal, they had a couple things that they didn't know at the library, but the Jesup Library is having summer programming It says, celebrate summer with the Jesup Public Libraries. We color your world. We'll welcome Blank Park Zoo, Universal Yums, Fontana Park, Dino Dimensions, Megaphone Blaster, Stories in the Park, and more. That's going to be on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. So yeah, check in with your library. There's a lot of neat things happening this summer at the library. And one more, every Monday in June and July from 6 to 7:30 in the evening, they'll offer a new challenge to compete with Lego blocks. And so I imagine, it sounds to me like you go in there and get a pile of Legos and see what you can build. So that would be a lot of fun for you to do that.
I had blocks growing up. I didn't have Lego blocks. I had blocks.
You had block. We just had sticks. So
had sticks.
Really the Steve Brown Art Center, looking ahead on the 21st, we're having our tiny art show in the gazebo. We already have some people with entries already. Look pretty nice. And also we're sponsoring the Brass Blast Brass Band. And they're on Friday, right? On Friday afternoon of Farmers Day.
From 2 to 3:30.
Yeah. And I wanted to mention, I was in Johnston last week at a high school graduation.
Okay.
Okay. And Joy Rueber, who's my daughter, she had a daughter graduating. Chris Higdon, who's a Jesup graduate, had a son graduating. Nick Bogue, who's a Jesup graduate, had a son graduating. And Jeff Gerhardt, who taught at Jesup, had a grandson graduating. And so it just goes, if you went down there to the Des Moines metro area and said, let's have a Jesup, if you ever lived in Jesup, we'll have a big reunion, you get a lot of people. I mean, it's just tons of people from Jesup that live in that area now.
See, when I grew up, all my classmates went to the Twin Cities from Cresco.
Yeah.
Went north.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah.
See, all my classmates went to Old
There you go.
Never left. It's amazing. I'm always amazed by that. And you see it in Jesup, too, the number of kids that graduate from high school, and they might go here or there, but they end up back.
They come home.
In Dunkerton, there's lots of people in Dunkerton. Grew up in Dunkerton, went to school in Dunkerton, and they live in Dunkerton, and even leave, I should say, but I know a man who left a better job to take a similar job in Dunkerton because he wanted to go back home to Dunkerton. And so there's just something about that. Hometown thing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And see, so I travel so many miles away from Hazleton, I don't even remember it. See. So. Okay, so that's the kind of the Jesup news that I have. So.
All right.
I want to talk a little later about a man named Christian Coonrod, though.
Okay. We will plan on that.
Okay.
So tonight we have a guest from Independence. John Klotzbach is with us. What is your title at the paper, John?
Chief bottle washer and chef.
You take pictures, you edit, you write articles,
That's all the same thing. They call me I work myself up to editor.
You are the editor.
Well, which in local news is not that big a deal. I go out and take pictures and write stories.
Yeah.
And I take stories that are submitted, no problem.
Yeah, you see that in the paper, that submitted article. Sometimes they have an author.
Well, I think today's front page is all, I had to edit a little bit, but it's all submissions that have been piling up, and because we were short today, so it was nice just to catch up on a lot of stuff.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's a cheat, but it worked.
Yeah, well, and you find people pretty good writers? Is there a lot of mistakes, or is it fairly easy? Or?
I am not one to throw stones. Just in this last Saturday's issue, I made some, I thought I copied information in, but it was still like a 2 years old, where you can copy paste, and it didn't save properly.
Yeah.
And then misidentifying people, that's
I was just talking about writing in general, because I've been reading some things that different people have written for different reasons. And this is remarkably well written for people who are supposedly can't write anything. It just looks like, some people are really doing a nice job of getting their thoughts down, and you can figure out what they're talking about.
Well, we have a story from Todd Reed, who's the coach of one of the coaches of the Mustang Bass Club, and he submitted an article, which, and since it's sports, I usually give that my sports editor first try. Sure. But he's busy with state golf and such, and so I use it. And reading through it, it's very well written. Yeah, very well written. Yeah. And then Michelle Toll Burke up at the library, she writes articles for the library, but every so often she'll also write other stories for me, like Health Beat, things like that. And she's very good too, so I appreciate that. And then even some students sometimes will submit things, a little bit more editing, but they're right on target. And some of the FFA reporters, very good writers too, and they get the points across.
Because you fear it's a lost. They're not as concerned with the mechanics or making sure that this follows this in the right order and this sort of thing. And,
well, that was my claim to fame, was back my UNI days. they had the writing competency exam, and you had to pass. I don't know if it's a requirement still. You had to pass before you could graduate. And several people on my dorm floor, they interested in their writing and trying to help them. But I passed it first time around. But my topic was I was very lucky to get one on writing about Iowa, what I liked about Iowa.
Yeah.
So you could develop your ideas and write a beginning, middle, and ending paragraph, and away you go. So
We sort of put the cart before the horse, John. So you grew up in the area. Where did you grow up?
Independence.
In town.
In town. I live in the house my dad grew up in, and that his grandfather sold the farm in 1916 in Westburg Township, bought the house, and there's been a Klotzbach in that house ever since.
Wow.
So I'm waiting for my century plaque.
Yeah.
Century Farms.
do
I got a
for
century
farms,
house.
yeah.
So that house is 109 years old.
Yeah.
No. Well, no. It was built in like the late 1890s.
Oh, okay.
But he just moved in there 1916.
Wow.
I see. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it hanging together pretty well, or?
Well, I got a vacuum before the relatives come in this weekend. But other than that,
Yeah.
oops, am I telling you?
My wife.
This is being recorded?
My wife lived in a family house where the grandfather had built it, and then her father bought the house from the grandfather, and she grew up in that house. And when the relatives wanted to come and see the home place, that was always a big deal as far as cleaning and making sure everything was nailed up and the siding was good and it's a pressure actually to buy the homestead if you got brothers and sisters that are critical and come and visit every now and then. So
well, no, I'm very blessed. You hear about farms or families after the parents are gone and such. The siblings kind of squabble over pieces of parts. My family, we're all lockstep on a few things, and so I've been very blessed with that.
I really thought he was going to say I was blessed because I'm an only child. But yours is much better. Yes,
I'm the one that home. Yeah,
I think it's great when families can get together and not squabble over little things like that, because you see that and it just tears families apart over something so simple, like a piece of furniture or.
So John, how'd you get into the newspaper business or writing business?
I don't know if it's a curse or blessed again from standpoint of about every job I've had. Someone has said, John, you should do that. John, we could use some help over here. And so I fell into a lot of different jobs that way, from college work to my first job. I actually took computer science and worked for a bank in Chicago for a few years. So my training was in the backroom operations and PCs, things like that, networking. And so it was pretty exciting. But then I changed jobs, followed a manager of mine, became a project manager. And then the bank I moved to after about a year and a half, they made a bad loan with some of the downtown banks, and they were in the hind end of collateral. And so so they thought, we only lost $50 million, we can survive. Well, it turned out to be more like $150 million. So they stopped, they put a pause in all the projects and reevaluated. And then I was project manager with not much to do, so I lost my job. And then about everybody in that division lost the job, and they actually sold that portion of the bank. But at the same time, my mom needed knee surgery back here in Independence. So I came back to look after Mom for a while. Thought life's been good, and here I am. And, but Mom was involved in a bunch of little groups, so I became her chauffeur. And so then, we need help moving this, or can you watch that table, for this, or can you show up, or Mom needs to be, that, and the other. At the time, the paper was very busy too, and so with little groups, you could submit your own photo in a little paragraph. Well, with my writing competency test in my back pocket, so I started writing little paragraphs, and then the paper hired another editor, and she would see me like library programs, or I was just there to have fun or something, or other little programs, and so she recognized, you're the guy that writes the paragraph. You can write a paragraph. So would you like to be a correspondent? So I started as correspondent, and then they eventually said, would you like to come in and get some part-time hours? And so I learned about layout and things like that, and a little bit more serious on the writing, bigger stories, and it just grew and grew. And then staff writer, and then last man standing. I'm an editor,
Okay.
That's all that, you know.
So, John, how long? Have you worked at? Has it been called the Independence Bulletin Journal as long as you've been there?
Oh yeah. Bulletin Journal goes. Growing up in Independence back in the 70s and such, they had the Bulletin Journal and they had the Conservative Tuesdays and Thursdays. I don't know which paper was which, top of my head. I'm not sure when they went down to one, but it's always been Bulletin Journal as far as I go. You know, as long as I've been there, and the roots of the paper are on our volume number. We go back to 1865 as a continual newspaper, so we're blessed that way too.
Sure.
And of course, now we're the only game in the county. Basically.
Was it ever a daily? Has it always been like a week or?
I think
years?
for my money, it's always been twice a week.
Twice a week.
Yeah, but I'm not. You know, it could ask Leanne Harrison or someone from the Historical Society could tell you more.
So I know the Owine paper was a daily for a long time, and now I think is it just a few
they
days
knocked
a
down
week?
one day. I think they don't do a Monday or something. Yeah.
So
they're just a sister paper, and I don't even know. It's
So John, the paper in 1865. Have you ever seen a copy of that first paper?
Not the first paper. I wouldn't doubt if the genealogy department or society in the basement of Independence City Hall has a copy because they go back. I have been blessed. Several people will come when they do clean out the garage. There were special issues in 1965, the 100 year, and so they have a huge for your radio audience. I'm holding my fingers up here, but people have given me those copies, and a few I have at the office, and a couple I have at home. So it's been pretty interesting to go through those.
Yeah.
And even a few years, 60 years old, they're very ginger to.
Now, being a local paper like the Kennedy assassination or something, do you do a big blow up of that kind of thing, or does that you just leave that to the national?
Well, I was only about one when.
Yeah, I just wondered about the paper though. If
I think they did do something, but I can't recall.
It'd have to be pretty big for your paper to cover it, as a national story. I just was wondering.
What we would do, we would look for an Independence angle or now the Camp County angle.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Well, and it's just amazing. Well, you look at 9/11. It was, and I didn't know this at the time. I only found this out maybe 10 years ago. Was the airport? All flights are shut down. But if you were a nurse or a special train, medical, that they need personnel out in New York, you could fly out. Well, it might have been Jim Connell, or I'm not positive on that, but it was like out of our airport that they were flying nurses, smaller planes out there. Yeah. And so here's the angle, of our own little backyard airport being a part of the bigger news story.
Did you ever get any negative feedback on any story you've done where people were upset with the approach you took or that sort of thing?
Trying to think story, not so much. Bad news for me is hard to write. I like to keep it up because we are a smaller. People want to see their local sports. They want to see the obituaries, and of course they want to see the traffic tickets. Which I'm way behind in doing that. But I would say
I always read those to see if there's somebody in there that I know. That's probably why everybody does it. Yeah.
Your benefactor's Heartland Technology scandal. I had no idea about it, and someone a month or so ago said, "How come you're not doing a story on that?" It's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And when people call up anonymously, it's like, okay, where do I go or what do I do?
Right.
But I was able to make a couple connections and just printed a canned thing, and then I did get a card in the mail. Thank you for following up on that.
Yeah, well, that's nice.
Yeah.
But I'd say that more people are upset about letters to the editor that I print or columns. And my politics aside, when it comes to the paper, I try to show both sides. And so if I got people yelling at me from both sides, it's like, hey, I'm doing my job. Yeah. And so I've had that.
Well, the Owine Register in '68, there was a tornado went through Owine. I was in Vietnam, and my aunt sent me a picture, or sent me a copy of the newspaper, and on the front page was a picture of this lady who was crushed by a house. She was killed.
Really?
Yeah. And I always wondered if her family, it just looked like her eyes were bugged. She was very definitely
dead. They printed that.
Yeah, it was on the front page, And
see, we have a rule, like car accidents. we don't
Yeah.
we don't approach
Yeah.
maybe the car on a wreck or something like
Yeah,
that, but
I
not the
understand.
way.
Yeah, yeah.
I went out one time back when the radio system was such that you could listen, and they've changed the Buchanan County
Yeah.
radio more digital, so I'm
That hurt a
still
lot
trying
of
to track
people's
that.
feelings, yes.
Well, but I heard that they had called in a life flight helicopter, which means they had a patient.
Sure.
The rescue. It's always a neat thing when a life flight helicopter comes.
Yeah.
By the time I got to the location, it had turned from a rescue to a recovery.
Yeah.
And when I walked up, and some guy was like, "Don't let that guy," and it's like, I hear you, I understand what's going on, and I respect that tremendously.
The letters to the editor, do you do any editing of those, or do you ever call the writer and say, is this what you really wanted to say? Or
That's very rare because I have such good writers. It's interesting. I'll question if I'm not familiar with them. Then I'll kind of follow up. Who are
Yeah.
you? And is this a legitimate thing?
Yeah.
But I'll clean up language or there and there.
Yeah.
Little grammar, small things like that. It's been rare. And matter of fact, I let one go through a few years ago, and that caused some steam. And so I had to kind of back off on that.
Okay, one thing I've always wondered about is, like recently, President Trump said that President Biden had stage 9 cancer. Well, cancer only goes to stage 5. So if you were writing that and the guy said stage 9, would you write stage 9, or would you correct it and turn it to a 4, which you know to be true, or would you just let it go and not make a comment, or?
Something like that. There's a couple different ways. One is call or contact the person and say, is this verified? Is this true? And the other would be, I could put an editor's note, or sometimes you put in braces that it's been edited.
Yeah.
To let people know that. There's a few ways to deal with that.
Because a lot of times reading those, you think, well, the guy just misspoke. He's not.
Yeah.
He just misspoke. And I always want, but you have to report what the guy said.
Yeah.
And then some way let your readers know that what he said is not correct. And
Fortunately, I don't have to cover Trump.
yeah,
So-
well, yeah, that would be.
And all our all our politicians locally are great.
Yeah.
They never make a mistake. They never misspeak. So
Just like
because they
Jim and
all
me,
subscribe.
right?
That's right. John, what's been the toughest story you've ever covered? Without using names, obviously. Maybe an event that was hard on you, or.
Oh boy! I tell you something that's got me more and more are the obituaries. The longer I'm back in town, it's like I know that person.
Yeah.
I know that
Yeah.
person. I know that person. Matter of fact, I just talked to a classmate whose father died, who was a teacher, and his obit's in the paper today. And it just happened when I'm going through the email he was sending me, there was another classmate's mother came through at the same time. So it's like,
Yeah.
and I just lost my mom a year ago, so it was like boom, boom, boom.
I
We're
enjoy
getting that
reading
age.
obituaries. I looked at them to see, one, if I knew the person or anybody that they knew, but also some people get very creative, or they get, they put a little humor in it, or, John loved to do this and that, and they're very interesting, and sometimes they're long, but the person just did tons of really neat things, and so, I don't know, people think it's ghoulish and I don't know, but sometimes you learn an awful lot, and it's very interesting to read some obituaries that people have put a lot of time into.
And I'll make
sometimes
connections on family too. It's like, they're brothers, or they're cousins, or that's why they hang out. Or
Every now and then you see one say, the guy who's dead, he wrote this himself. You can figure.
What impresses me?
Are you saying you need help writing?
Well, actually-
are you submitting something or?
I probably could use some help, but I want true things said about me, and so I better write it myself.
What impresses me, John, is every event I go to. Not that I'm going to a lot of events, but I see you going to multiple events. Are you ever home? Do you ever have a day
pulled
off?
me out to come here. It's like,
This is one night off.
I could be vacuuming tonight, but no.
There you go. No, I mean, how many nights a week do you go to something?
Weekends are more full of and we're getting into parade season. Fair Week's going to be coming up. There's a lot of things, So I took, there's some days I can take off. Monday nights, there's always something going on, in Independence. It's rare I can get out to the other cities, to cover stuff. And that's why I'm so grateful for people who either tell me what's going on. It's like, oh, you should write up this, or they'll submit something of another event, like Monica Bankston out of Littleton sent pictures. She's very good. I cover the Memorial Day service in Independence. I follow some of the cemetery tours of the VFW and Legion going out, and then I go to the Independence event. And then Monica sent in pictures from Littleton and area, and then Corinne Love down in Kowalski sent me the events prior. I haven't seen any pictures, Corinne, but if you want to.
Are you limited to how many pictures you can put in the paper and things like that
I'll take
each
100
week?
pictures. I'll select 10, and I'm lucky if 3 get in the paper. Some go on the online.
Right.
But and to be honest, more and more with the print costs, they are narrowing my number of pages I can have, unless your team goes to state sports pays, because they can get advertising to pay for it and stuff. And you might even notice some of the ads lately on the back page of the Bulletin Journal are like full page ad. Who are these guys? They're like Hamilton figurines and things like this. And it's like, that's a corporate ad that it pays the bills, but it takes away space, to put in color pictures. So,
Well, you have to have the ads, or you can't have the paper.
Exactly. It's all,
I'm sure it's a tough
just like any
line.
other business, you to balance.
Have you ever taken heat for putting an ad next to an article that...
I'd say, and I don't make those decisions on layout. I have a graphic designer that I'd say, here's my story, here's my picture, this is what this is the lead picture I'd like if it works. But with the ad placement, I know it's kind of funny when they do the big special sections that they're saying, okay, now don't put these two businesses next to each other because they're similar. Or by the same token, if we're doing a story on one business and they have an ad, you kind of want that on the same page. Sometimes my thought is like, well, put the ad somewhere else, and then you can see their name in one page and see their ad in the other. It's like they got two. I don't know. That's just me.
I was reading an Iowa Daily years ago, and it was like page 6. They had a story about an airplane crash, and right below it, they were advertising flights out of Waterloo.
Well, and because of space, sometimes we'll be putting obits next to somebody. It's. Celebrating a big birthday, and it's like, and here's the obits right next to it. It's like, okay, well, you just can't choose some
I have
days.
seen those kind of things too. It makes you wonder, was somebody thinking or not?
So John, let's your paper will live forever. Let's talk about the newspapers. This thing here is run a lot of newspapers out of business.
Well, not so much, because we have a digital edition. You can pull that up on your phone. What's more hurtful, I think, is like Facebook and social media. I can't remember the last time. I think I've had maybe in the last 3 years maybe one birth announcement. I can't remember the last wedding announcement I did. I mean, we have forms still under the desk somewhere that about the bride and groom, and they wore this and this kind of dress style.
Tremendous
and somebody poured tea, and and that's what I look about the old
Catherine
papers.
dress or something. I never knew what that was. But
what was it? Umbra? Or is it umbra? It's like we're a shading or something. I learned that word with covering
Well, a lot of that is you have a new baby in your house. Bad things happen. Some like 1 in a million or whatever. But people don't want People used to rob houses when they knew the family was at the funerals and that sort of thing. So I think that's why they don't put those things in there like they used to.
But they'll put it on Facebook?
Well,
I mean, I think they're backing up from because they're understanding that.
People are understanding
that. Talk to Kardashian with the with the jewelry robbery a few years ago.
Who travels with $10 million worth of jewels in her suitcase?
Well, I stopped doing that right away.
As soon as that happened to her, I put all mine away.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. Of course, I always thought, too, why would you buy big diamonds and stuff just to put it in a lockbox or something, too, So I don't know. That's why I don't have a lot of it.
I had a tough time selling you guys the stuff, too. So
we need to start stealing it from a better class of people, see. So.
Well, check out the garage sales. You never know what you're going to find.
So, John, let's talk local here a little bit. How did the IBJ change when the local paper closed here in Jesup?
Well, of course, my publisher and ownership, no, I shouldn't. Their mouths were watering. No, but no. I think that they did reach out and did like sampling and said, hey, we're the Bulletin Journal. If you're interested, here's some sample papers. And I'll tell you, when the Jesup paper stopped, we had a big response from Jesup compared to when Winthrop News stopped. I don't hear many stories as I do out of Jesup. We're trying to reach out more to Winthrop and do things there, because there's a lot. I mean, it's great little communities on both sides of Independence. It's just amazing. The smaller the community, it's like the more they pull together or branded and such. It's just been great. So do have more subscribers. We picked up a few subscriptions up on the retail side. On the government side, of course, we're the only legal newspaper in the area, so we picked up, of course, Jesup School District, City of Jesup. We have Winthrop, EB, all the legal notifications and such.
And those have to help an awful lot, don't they?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I know, but those rates are all set.
Yeah.
They do a smaller print, but the legislature says this is how much you have to charge.
Was there a movement not to require that anymore, not to have the minutes published to save money or something? And
that was a year or two ago.
A horrible thing.
But I think the Iowa lawyers kind of backed and said, nope, you need this, you need this.
Yeah.
And that's the same reason we still have abstracting as opposed to just land titles.
Yeah.
That's another story.
It'd be interesting. it would be interesting if someone pushed that, why they couldn't make them put it on the school website. Not that I'm trying to run business away from.
Thank you, Jim. Next.
It is. I mean, it is amazing.
But I think there's a difference between, once it's in print, it's harder to fabricate or change that. If it's digital, you're up to anything can happen there.
Yeah.
What I hate is it says lot something and section something township this, and I say I don't know where that is. If they would put it's at 914 Dorman Street and then you say, oh, I could go look at that and see what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But,
well, I
hate
guess
the
more
legal
difficult with ag
descriptions.
land, but still, I hear what
the
you're
legal
saying.
descriptions don't help me at all, and so you'd have to make a call or something to find out where's that farm at or whatever. So it just always seemed like they're giving you all the information, but they're making it hard for you to really find out what you want to know. And so.
Yeah, sometimes I question some of the stuff because, oh, John, here's all the information, and that's honestly because I'm not a born and bred journalist, where you have the bigger stories and you have to pull the information together into a tight column or two. That's my Achilles heel, is trying to, because my siblings always said I wanted to tell every blade of grass in a story, and so that's a hard thing for me to do. Well, legal descriptions are legal descriptions.
Do you ever see the time in the newspapers or the magazines coming back, growing like they were?
Well, if you read the emails I get from the newspapers and publishers, advocate groups, it's like, they're doing great things over here in this paper. They're doing great things in that paper. And I did think there was going to be a bounce back at some point, because you're looking at now where people say, limit your screen time. It's such a wild west on that, with people can say anything with no repercussions. There's no editor.
Sure.
At least, there's a little bit of filter with me to kind of clean it up, and we have a policy that every time that I tried, I would say about 95% of the time, every time we have a letter to the editor, I'll try to put the letter to editor policy, which I don't think people read ahead of time.
I read it once, but
we're 300 words,
that.
But it does get flaky, or not flaky, but it gets a little difficult. Where's that line between being abusive and being the truthful, or having an opinion and spewing out lies?
Was it Mr. Voigt that does the stars? Yeah. I was thinking with people, he obviously, very well read and knows all about this stuff, and when he puts articles in there, I always nice to go out and Venus is going to be by the moon or whatever, and I don't know, I just think it's a neat kind of thing to allow someone like that, give him the space to write.
Oh yeah, well he does. He's there every month. Don't have to worry about it. He'll sometimes, if he goes on vacation, he'll send it in a week or so early. And I'm also very proud of my pastor's pens. Where I have 4 regular pastors, and then when there's a 5th Saturday, I try to rotate that. Like this Saturday, we have a different pastor. Read the paper, find out who it is.
All right.
So what's the best part of your job, John?
Oh, sitting down with people like you.
You two have
that is where I, for all the frustrations, taking phone calls some days, it's going out, being able to talk to people and learn so much and just take notes and then be able to get a story and great little pictures and stuff. You know, I always say I'd rather get a picture of a kid on the front page than a meth lab. That's always been my philosophy.
What is the toughest part of your job?
Well, deciding what stories, you know, I can get in, and especially when space is very limited. You know, it's not like the internet where, just dump it out and away you go. It's like, no, you gotta, maybe you can't tell the whole story because you have to fit a picture or you have to put this other story or this. So that's difficult. Other than, you know, bad news type things.
Yeah.
So you said printing costs have gone up, though, dramatically.
And I don't see the bills. I just get told, like, oh, no, you don't get a raise this year because of printing. But I think the last big hit was paper this last year. When they raised the rates there years ago or so, was because of paper.
Do we import that, so we have to pay a tariff on it? Or?
They don't tell me. But I've been across the Canadian border, and I've seen the trees and the pulp print.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So
where do they print paper, John?
Owine's got the press.
Okay.
And so, you know, our paper, Bulletin Journal now is owned by Community Media Group, CMG, out of downstate Illinois. They own several clusters of community-sized papers, mostly out east, like the Finger Lakes region, New York. They have Fort Madison, they have Atlantic, and then up in northeast Iowa, they have Owine, Independence, Waverly, Vinton. They used to have Cedar Falls, but they closed down. And then they now have the Echo and West Union up that way.
You watch old movies and you see newspaper movies, they had room or building with a printing press and the papers going this way and that way.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's just out of a computer, right? How big a space do they need to print the paper?
Well, the press is actually still big because it is still a four-color, you know.
Okay, so they do actually run through a press of some kind.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's not Gutenberg, you know, where they're pulling down the screw and everything.
Well, I
no,
they
runs
just somehow took a picture and, I don't know, just magically appeared or whatever, I don't know.
Well, and that has changed. You know, you don't have the tin plates. If you go to M's, ever been to M's coffee shop?
Yes, I have.
If you look on some of the walls back there, they found when they moved in the basement, they had some of the old plates, ink plates, and they have them on the wall. And it shows you like what the price of beef was or a bunch of carrots, something like that.
Okay.
But so those were the actual plates back in the day because that's where the press was. That's why they call it the newsroom because that was part of the newspaper.
Yeah.
The Bulletin Journal was in there.
Put in the letters in there to put them in backwards and upside down or whatever.
Yeah.
And the guys got so good at that they were very quick.
You have to mind your P's and Q's.
Yeah, okay, sure. That's where that came from. Yeah. I watch a lot of old movies.
Yeah.
So even typeface and stuff because they had different actual blocks you could pick out. You know.
So, John, where's your boss at? I mean,
I'm the boss. There's no way on there.
There you go.
You can't be the boss of me.
No, my boss is my ad exec. You know, but you hear that, Chantal? I called you my boss. No, my direct report is Tracy Cummings in Owine. She's the publisher.
Okay.
And she is over all the Northeast Iowa papers. The ownership is down in West Frankfort, Illinois.
Okay.
And do you hear much from either one of those two?
Independence Bulletin Journal is running so smoothly that the publisher can go off and deal with other issues.
Bad papers, yes.
Yeah. But, you know, that's the blessings of email. Yeah, there's a quick, you know, if something's coming up or special sections. And then, you know, the people that I'm working with have been doing it for a while that, you know, they all know what to do. And so they can tell them, okay, we need stories for this special section's coming up. And so we need to focus on that.
Well, the lady that comes out and works with us at Farmers Day to get our ad stuff together is very
Chantal.
Yeah, very nice lady.
Oh,
very good. She just boom, 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 and everything's fine. So we used to have terrible meetings about publicity, but now they're just smooth as silk.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
This is Steve Brown Arts Center Podcast Network. We're with John Klotzbach from the Independence Bulletin Journal. So John, have you ever traveled for the paper outside of the county?
I'd say the best, the greatest honor were a few honor flights out to D.C., flying out of Waterloo and spending the day with the veterans. And it's a long day, but I tell you, a few years ago, I was actually we got up to Arlington Cemetery a little bit early, so I hightailed it over to where the Sullivan brothers are buried. So I got some pictures of that. You know, and But yeah, the changing of the guard at the Tomb of the Unknowns it's something to see.
Have you ever-
And then Vietnam. I mean, there's a guy from Independence that I knew, and I found his name every time I go to the Vietnam Wall. I look up his name and such.
Have you ever met? There's a small Iowa paper with the editor Pulitzer Prize or something. Storm Lake, is it
yeah,
maybe?
yeah.
Okay. Have you ever met that man? Or
my
met
buddy
at a
Art.
meeting where he was at, or?
No, I just hear about. I write about him, and
Yeah.
wow, I saw the TV show, the Iowa PBS. Another good broadcast and journalistic people.
Your pictures of Arlington. What are some of the best pictures you've ever taken? You take a lot. How many pictures do you take a week?
It depends on the week, sir. I was out at Otterville. They have a new business. Read about it in Saturday's paper.
I see that. I see that.
But,
Don't give it away now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we just had Career on Wheels over in Independence, with the kids and all the vehicles out there. Of course, and again, Jesup was very gracious, letting me know early this year about the 35th anniversary of their Dollars for Scholars program.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to make some connections there and got 2 or 3 stories out of that, including, when where Kathy Earls and his daughter, Kathy was, one of the original, 35 years ago got a scholarship.
Yeah,
and then this year her daughter's graduating
yeah.
and was able to present her a scholarship.
That's,
Kathy Hamilton. Yes.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
you can translate.
Yeah. I can do that,
Yeah.
Your interview with Paul Yeager, I thought, was very well done.
Yeah, well,
And
yeah.
he'd be interesting. and
That was Sparky
easy.
Giroux said, call Paul.
Yeah.
So I emailed, and he was very responsive.
Yeah, I would say he'd be a good guy to talk to because he would talk to you and make sense. And so,
And again, a lot of it, fortunately, was email.
Mm-hmm.
So I just throw out some questions, and he was very generous with it. You never know how people are going to,
Sure.
one-word answer. So you try to ask questions that take more than yes and no.
Yeah.
And he was very, very good.
I have interviewed children before. It is very, very hard. 1 minute. Yes.
And there's been a couple stories where I couldn't run because there was no, it's like the grandparents there saying, "Oh yeah, do this."
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah. They wanted to win a prize for being cute or something,
Yeah.
or be on YouTube, and so yeah.
but
All right.
I get some of my best information from grandparents.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We tell it all.
So
What do we care? Yeah.
So what pictures that you've taken that you have on your walls at home?
I got them all in my computer, and I still have them digital. I don't think I've ever printed. The best picture on the wall at home is my high school graduation picture, I guess, if you're really pushing me.
His beard wasn't great then. So.
No. I started growing the beard at COVID, and it got pretty scraggly just to see how long it would go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the best pictures. I'd say. Well, again, you go down to M's. They've got some that I've taken that are on the wall of like Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton.
Oh, those are all your pictures.
Yeah,
Okay.
Pence.
Yeah.
I took that one. Representative Hinson. It's kind of, and in the back wall.
So does M call you and say, "I got another celebrity coming. I need a new picture." See?
No, but it's been really neat with especially the presidential. Trump never came to Buchanan County, so I still that sticks in my craw. It's like, where are you, man? Come on, everybody else showed up. I guess I scared him away. I don't know.
Well, people have their standards,
Yeah, that's true too.
The first politician I saw in Buchanan County was Jesse Jackson.
Wow, that goes back.
Yeah, that was one of my first years in Jesup. I can't remember what year, what election that would have been. But he had a nice crowd out at the fairgrounds. I can remember. I mean, there was probably 100 people, which for a presidential candidate is a lot in Independence.
Yeah.
Well, I remember. I've took pictures of Barack Obama at the fairgrounds, and then what was his first name? Yang. Andrew Yang. He was out there, and he told this story about technology coming down the pike, and we're going to have these robot trucks. Because their technology, and this is a few years ago. I mean, it's come a little while. Got your taxi cabs now.
Oh, so no drivers, you mean?
Driverless.
Oh, okay.
Driverless.
Yeah.
And so the story he's telling at Buchanan County Fairgrounds is about this truck coming from California, going across the United States to like Pennsylvania or something, and it was hauling butter. And I'm thinking, you're in Iowa at our fairgrounds, Ag Culture Center, and you're talking about another truck out of California selling ag products. That's what stuck in my brain.
Yeah.
Not the technology side of it,
Sure.
but the ag side of it is like, oh man. You see, he didn't get elected, so.
Yeah, I worked on that election, but thank you.
Well, you should have talked to him. Talk to me first about that.
We got 1% of the vote that night.
Well, butter was what, 2%?
Yeah. So, John, is there a story we didn't ask you that you'd like to talk about?
See, now that's one of my favorite questions. Like after I ask all these questions, is then what did I not ask?
Yeah.
What am I? No, you covered that. I should have seen the list of questions before so I could think more. Thinking on my feet's not the best thing for me.
We like to surprise people.
Oh yeah, I like what's going to be in the paper.
Yes, gotcha journalism.
Oh, gotcha. Don't. We didn't talk about journalism in general in the state of what is truth, because there's a lot of pushback on even mine. It was, why'd you put that? It's fake or fake news type stuff. But it's like, I'm the local paper. I mean, how much fake could I? You can go down to the coffee shop and find out all about it. You know?
Yeah.
I think it's more fake, honestly, on some of the social media sites. They're battling more on that.
You can't believe it.
I can't keep. I limit myself so much on that. Only when I'm told I have to go see what's being said do I follow up on some of that.
Yeah.
I'd rather, social media is good for like, here's an event, I'll share it and get it out.
Yeah.
Or here's a road closure, that type of thing.
Well, this goes back a long ways where people, tell a lie and then just keep telling it, and don't listen to anybody, just keep telling it. And it's been going on forever. I like it when they say, he said this. That's not true.
No, but just to be open up, what I find frustrating is where people won't even talk. They get in the corner. And it's like, oh no, this is what I heard. Now I'm sticking to it. I'm not learning anything new.
Yeah.
And
don't confuse me with facts.
Right. And it's like, and I am big enough that if I get something wrong, I'll own. I didn't understand that. I learned something new today.
Yeah. That's a wonderful attitude to have, I think.
Well, when you're trying to do news type stories, it's all about being inquisitive.
Yeah.
And not taking everything you hear at face value. Yeah. I've gotten burned with a few things on politicians. They have a way of wording stuff. Okay, fine. You give your best spin on it, but end of the day, here's the facts. 1, 2, 3.
And your readers have to trust you.
Yeah.
If they're going to stay with you, and so.
And well, I hope they, if they have story ideas, or if I get something wrong, let me know, because I'm open to that too. Yeah. But be able to back up your story, back up your facts, and I'll say, well, I heard this straight from the horse's mouth, type thing.
I'm mostly just about feeling. This is how I feel about it. See, so.
Well, that's for your letters to the editor.
Well, keep up the good work, young man.
Well,
I think it's wonderful.
I try. Yeah.
Thank you so much, John, for coming in. Appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate all my subscribers out there.
There's a number at the top of the IVJ readers. How many readers does the IVJ have?
Well, we've dropped a little bit since time I've been there, and readership is different from subscribers. I think there's one of those things to look at where if they have the subscribers, then our readership's like double. I don't know if they still print that or not.
No, it's not on this one.
I think our readership is around 4,000, something like that, because subscribers were around 2,000. That might be a little old, though.
Right.
So, but it's always exciting when we get a new subscriber.
I'm a co-subscriber, so it's in somebody else's name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, people can go to the library, too, and read it.
No, there's two families with we do the Bulletin Journal, the Register, and the Courier.
My dad was like that, too. We used to get... Well, we get the Bulletin Journal. My mom was from Manning, Iowa. She get the Manning Monitor. And then Dad would get the Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, Des Moines. And then friends up the block, they lived out in New Jersey for quite a while and retired back to Independence area. And he would get the New York Times.
Yeah.
So Dad, when he'd be walking home from work, every week or so, he'd go in the garage, and there was a cardboard box. He'd pick out the week's papers, then go through and read the New York Times and some of the stuff.
Well, my folks, both of them just had an 8th grade education, but they read 2 newspapers every day: the Register, Owine Daily Register, and the Waterloo Courier. I don't know if we Some people got the Des Moines Register. But I used to read it at the gas station.
Thank you so much for coming. We need to get you on as a regular contributor on here.
Well, maybe I could start a thing where I read the comics, like the old, fireside chats.
All right. Well, that'd be a great way to start.
And here's Dagwood. It's eating a big sandwich.
Oh my gosh!
He's still eating that big sandwich.
The one I like is, I think it's called Pickles, the old grandparents.
Oh, yeah,
I get
yeah.
such a kick out of that. There was one again today. Makes me laugh. It's the only one that makes me laugh out loud sometimes.
You can get it. You can understand
Yeah,
it.
I get a kick out of it. Yeah. So.
Well, very good.
Well, thank
right.
you.
Thank you
so
very
much. This is Steve Brown Arts Center Podcast Network. We're back. Thanks to John Klotzbach for coming in and that wonderful interview. And John would fit right in with us. He enjoys
I think he does,
conversation.
Yeah. Conversation and just talking about things, and probably knows more about independence right now than anybody else.
Yeah.
Because he goes all over and sees it all. So
Yeah.
good man to know.
He is.
And nice fellow too.
He
I mean,
is.
interesting, and you'd like to have him around. So
Yeah. So, Dale, you mentioned earlier you wanted to talk about someone.
yeah, I want to talk about a man named Christian Coonrod.
Okay.
Okay, and I got all kinds of papers on him, and I'm going to go through the list here, then I'll tell you why. This is about a man named Christian Cappy, was his nickname, Coonrod, and he died in 1896. He loved blue plums and mushrooms. On his cemetery marker, there's a poem I've seen. It says, "Dearest Father, thou hast left us, and thy loss we sadly feel, for in our house there is a place that none on earth can fill." And he lived on a farm in Coffins Grove Township, which is in Delaware County, over by Manchester. And if you ever want to find his gravestone, it's in a small cemetery on Highway 13 between Strawberry Point and Manchester. He was over 30 when the War of 1812 broke out, and he heard the news from a cousin. He left the farm and joined the Army serving on the Niagara frontier. It would be up near Niagara Falls in New York. As a private, he was with Colonel Miller's successful assault on Queensland's Heights. He also participated in the Battle of Fort Erie and witnessed Commodore Perry's famous victory on Lake Erie. That was in 1813. He ended his career at Sackett's Harbor, but he lost his discharge papers and never received any kind of pension. He returned to his Pennsylvania farm, and he stayed there until the opening of the Erie Canal, which is famous in song and lore. And so he ran a boat on the Erie Canal for many years. He ran a line boat, and that would be the one that was pulled by the mule named Sally, and pulled on the Erie Canal for several years. And he'd also had previously operated a small boat on the Schuylkill River when Philadelphia was only a few thousand people. Reading, Pennsylvania was a small county town, and Pittsburgh only had 2 stores and a boarding house. So this is a long time ago. He also worked on the Susquehanna River for some years. There was a prairie fire that burned out his farm after he moved to Illinois, and so he sold out there and went to Colony Township in Delaware County, Iowa, and his habitation was a log cabin with 2 rooms. He went to Illinois and then back to Colesburg, and actually I have seen the original farmstead in Colesburg where he lived. Okay, this is a man who heard George Washington make a speech and actually saw Lafayette and Stephen Girard and others. I had to look up Stephen Girard. You ever heard of him, Girard?
I've heard of him. I don't
In his
remember.
time, he was the richest man in America. He practically funded the War of 1812 himself, and when he died, was considered to be the richest man in America. Was big in banking and everything. Christian Coonrod drank freely until about age 100, using hard liquor, and used tobacco from age 16 until he died. When he was 95, he would walk 7 miles into Manchester and sell pictures of himself for 25 cents. 7 miles in, 7 miles back. He's 95 years old. And he would sign them with a cross because his hand shook so much at that time that he couldn't write his name anymore. At the time of his death, he had 11 children living, ranging in age from 30 to 53. He had 11 children, all of them survived to adulthood. Had 42 grandchildren and 34 great-grandchildren. At the time of his death, he was 116 years old, 5 months and 9 days.
Oh.
So he may have been the oldest man in the world, certainly the oldest man in Iowa, and one article said he was the oldest man from the Mississippi River to the Pacific Ocean. So, and he's buried at Thorpe Union Cemetery in Delaware County.
What side of Manchester is Thorpe Union?
The cemetery is between Strawberry Point and Manchester. If you go south out of Strawberry Point or north out of Manchester. And it's a small little cemetery on the west side of the road. And Christian farmed 60 acres in Coffins Grove Township, Delaware County, Iowa. He was over 30 when the War of 1812 broke out. I was going to see if there's anything new in this. Ran the boat line on the Erie Canal. He drank freely until around the age of 100. He used tobacco since 16. Heard Washington, saw Lafayette, Stephen Girard, and others. He was a strong supporter of Grover Cleveland for president. And said as in older, he enjoyed running away when he was older, which I thought was interesting. And that's how they ended the article that was written about him in the papers. He enjoyed running away. So I suppose they had to come and find him. Says this is from the Cascade Pioneer, published in 1895. Christian Coonrod, aged 150 years, was in town last Saturday selling his picture. The old gentleman is probably the oldest man in Iowa, was born in 1780, and is still hale and quite hearty. He walked from his home to Dundee, a distance of 7 miles, between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock Friday afternoon. He's a veteran of the Black Hawk War. I don't think that's right. A veteran of the War of 1812. And so he has great-grandchildren, we are told, whose old age incapacitates them from labor, and yet he still works quite a garden last summer and still did his own plowing.
Where did you get all your information,
Well,
Dale?
I'll tell you in a minute. Okay. The reason why I want to talk about him is Christian Coonrod had those 11 children. Okay, one of them was a man named George Coonrod, was his son. George had a daughter, and I do not know her first name, but her name is referred to in the records here as Mrs. George Lane. So apparently, one of his daughters married a man named George Lane, and Christian Coonrod died in her home. Mrs. George Lane had several children, and one of them was a woman named Susie Lane. And Susie Lane lived from 1886 to 1985. Susie Lane had 8 children. The oldest was a woman named Levada Clendenin, who married a man named Roy Rueber. And they had 4 boys. One of them was a man named Dale Rueber, who was born in 1947. And so we're looking at 250 years of this country next year. And yet, how short it is. So my grandmother sat on the knee of this man who knew George Washington, who had listened to George Washington speak, who had seen Lafayette, who had fought in the War of 1812,
Yes.
who had worked on the Erie Canal when it first opened. And this is my grandmother's
Isn't that
great-grandfather.
incredible?
And so it just all adds up. So I figure he was my mother's, I don't know. So he'd be great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather. I think he is my great-great-great-grandfather.
Yep.
And my grandmother knew this man. You know, it's just amazing how we think we're an old country, but we are a very young country. And I just find this very interesting that my grandmother talked about him to me, said that when he was 100 years old, he could still run and jump on a pony and ride a bareback. I like the idea that he drank whiskey and used tobacco and probably never saw a doctor. So it's just interesting. So anyway, I thought I would bring him up because
I love that.
I was talking to my kids. I took a picture of his gravestone. I got it on the phone. I can show it to you. Where it's got the old side, then they redid the other side so it can be read better because the other, you know how that limestone weathers. You can read it on both sides, but it's clear on the one side. And so I stopped there one day and took the picture of his gravestone and shared it with my cousin and everything. And she was real interested in him. And she died last year. And so I thought, I don't know, just to me, it's just fascinating that my grandmother knew a man that was born. And my grandmother lived to be 99. And so a lot of these guys lived to be well, you know, into their 80s and 90s. And so I'm shooting for it.
There you
But I
go.
don't know.
Good shot.
So anyway, that was Christian Coonrod, and you can look him up.
I love that.
Thank you, Jim, for giving me a little time for that.
Thank you. As we close for the show here, there's just a few a few SBAC announcements we got to look at. Don't forget the jam session, the third Sunday of the month. We're going to meet in the Land of Corn Park.
Okay.
Again at 2:00. Don't forget the Artists Collaborative, the fourth Monday of every month, and that meets at 6:30 at the First Lutheran Church in Jesup. I want to say we have such great loyal listeners, and I'm blessed, Dale. You know, as you get older, as a teacher, and one of those students sits here at the table with us. Blake was one of my students. I had the opportunity to spend Sunday with Corey Noble and Keegan Smith, two of my students I spoke of Katie Kelly a couple weeks ago. We're so lucky to have loyal listeners, and many of those have bought into the Steve Brown Arts Center. And I can't thank our listeners enough, Dale. People like you that give you free time to help us. I'm so lucky to
Thank you. I'm glad to do it.
To be working with you. I look forward to the mini art show, the 21st of June at Farmers Day in the band gazebo. It's our goal to have over 64 pieces and beat my friend's record down.
That'll be a world record, won't it?
Yes, it will. Remember, you must have a 5. It must be smaller than 5 by 7. If you have news or would like to sponsor us, email us at jim@stevebrownartscenter.org or call 319-290-0241 and leave a message. I'm Jim Gillespie with co-host Dale Rueber and producer Blake Tempus. Remember, Blake is on assignment next week, so next week's show is pre-recorded. Our thanks to Em and Tammy last week for having us at M's Coffee. Our thanks to John Klotzbach for coming in this week here at Cowork 591 Studios. Thanks to the audience for bringing these stray dogs into your life, and remember that each day is about little victories.